Greetings, everyone. A big shout out to all my viewers or subscribers from Japan. This video is for you. And I also want to say a big shout out to those of you who have sent me all these different topics to discuss. I truly appreciate it. And I'm saying I'm just so excited about the way the channel is going and the participation that I'm getting from folks who say, I want to hear your opinion on this or on that. And so continue to send me your suggestions to generan@gmail.com and I'll do my best to spin them out. So sometimes on a day you get 3 videos, and there are days when some things are pre-recorded, and there are days when that stuff is coming as soon as I get it. I not just from people who suggested but from the spirit that leads. And this one is really very important. It's very important because one morning I woke up and in my spirit, and I could hear it so loud, I actually turned around to look if someone actually said it to me. But it was a spirit that was speaking, and the word was capitulate, or capitulate, depending on your accent. I have a Jamaican accent, so capitulate, right? And that means cease to resist an opponent or an unwelcome demand. So essentially, it's asking you to surrender. So, of course, when I heard capitulate, and I looked it up and I thought, well, what am I supposed to, cease to resist? Or what is this unwelcome demand? And so I sat on that for a day. And the next day, woke up and I heard kamikaze. I kid you not. And usually when these things happen, I have company. So it's so nice to, not that I should care if someone doesn't believe me, but when there is witness to it, it's just, good for me, that it makes me know I'm not insane, because I hear the thing in my spirit. I respond in a way where the person who's beside me sees that I'm visible, shaken by what I hear. And kamikaze was a Japanese strategy where vehicles were used to defeat the enemy. It was referred to as a divine wind. And so there's a deliberate attempt for individual to crash into their enemy's target. I'm trying to avoid that S word, but you get what I'm saying. So this was a strategy used by Japan to deal with their enemies. And so 2 days in a row, those 2 words came. And I kid you not, shortly thereafter, I got this suggestion to discuss this thing from a Jamaican that lives in Japan, talking about racism that she's dealing with and how it's affecting her mental health. And so I realized that the spirit sort of prepared me to respond to this. And the way I'm going to respond to it, some people might disagree, but you remember, you asked me for my opinion. Now, when we hear about the kamikaze, that is related to the Hiroshima and the Nagasaki's bombing. The United States attacked Japan, and of course, they had their response to that. Now, when you think about Japan, the first thing that comes to my mind is Japanese versus foreigners. That's kind of the dichotomy that exists in Japan. And, you are either Japanese, and it's not just because you're born there make you Japanese, but it's because of your heritage, and you are either a Japanese or you're a foreigner. So to respond to you, my Jamaican friend who is married to a Japanese man, and you're talking about the pressures and the pain and suffering you're going through in Japan because you claim that they're very big bullies and that they're abusing you, and the racism is just too much for you. However, from what you've shared with me, this is where you plan to live. Now you have a child, and you're trying to navigate your way in that space. It would be very easy for me to say, why don't you leave there and go back to Jamaica? The first question you're going to say to me is, go back to what? First and foremost, if you go to Jamaica and you tell your family about all your suffering, they're going to tell you to go right back to Japan. If you will live in America or Canada or the UK and you go home with and tell them their intention of returning home, you will never get them to encourage you to do that. If you're very wealthy, they might not say anything, but they will more than likely discourage you. No matter how much you're suffering in any foreign country, Jamaican people are going to tell you to stay there. They don't care if you die. And some of them are going to tell you to stay there because they're worried about the Western Union receipt. So I can't tell you to do that. Now you're married to a Japanese man, and as a foreigner, it is his position or his place to try to protect you as best as he can. He understands the people, he understands the culture, and all that goes with that. So the only thing I can say to you is that your Japanese husband has to do his best to protect you. I'm not going to tell you whether you stay or you go. But what I'm going to do in the rest of this video is to say that, our people, African people, always trying to, leave from Africa, no matter how wealthy they are, to go to Europe and go wherever in the world, America, educate their kids any place in the world except in Africa. And it's a kind of a status thing. And, they're wealthy and they can live lavish lives in Africa. And they go and they buy some cubicle in England just to show their neighbors and their friends that, look at us, we're living. And as a person from Caribbean background, I live here. I've gone through all kinds of stuff, and I have contemplated many times of going home, and I was always discouraged, really, always discouraged that, stay where you are. It can't get any better by you coming here. When we look at the situation with Japan, as I said earlier, it's Japanese, and foreigners. And I'm not going to criticize them. I'm going to say, if you go somewhere and all these things are happening to you, as a human being, you have a right to liberty and freedom and all those things. And you should be able to live anywhere in the world and have your dignity. But the truth is, Japan is and has done what it needed to do to protect itself and its citizens. And so some of the roadblocks that are there, and it's not just there either in other Asian countries as well. These individuals are protecting their own interest and their own people. And so you will never find these ones, coming out to give you rights above their own citizens. Because we're African, we don't understand that concept. We don't understand that, why aren't you jumping all over your own to protect me? I mean, I know it's difficult to have this conversation. I gotta stay in the middle right here to say what's happening. You can stand there and demand your right and your liberty, and you can ask your partner to also help you navigate your way in that space. But it was a choice you made to leave from your own country and to live there. And your choice doesn't mean that you should be abused. Absolutely not. But when you see that it's not changing and it's not getting any better, you ultimately will have to make a decision. But most of us cannot make a decision to stand up and say we deserve to be treated this way, or we deserve to get this kind of respect in wherever space we're staying at. Because at the end of the day, we would sometimes rather stay in those spaces than go where we might have peace. I'm sure I'm not saying what you need me to say, but I'm not going to sit here and say too much negative things about Japan, because guess what? These folks are proud of their heritage. And as the Spirit said to me, you must cease to resist the opponent or the unwelcome demand and surrender. And I'm just assuming that the Spirit is saying, wherever you are, when you're staying in places where you obviously are not loved, where you're hated, you have to ultimately decide that you're either going to surrender or you're going to resist. And when you resist, you have to be prepared to leave. So if you think about the Maroons in Jamaica, when they decided that they're going to resist European influence and their bondage, they had to leave. You cannot resist and remain. It just doesn't work anyway. So once you are not going to resist, then you're going to have to surrender. And some of us have surrendered. Some of us have decided to say, okay, well, I'm going to fight this battle and I'm going to leave that one. When you're in an interracial relationship, your children are going to have to be dealing with some of the issues that you face also. Because even though they're half whatever, half white, half Japanese, half Chinese, whatever, they're still not going to be accepted by those who don't like you. So if you're an African person and you find all this oppression when your children come, even though they're biracial, sometimes it's even worse for those ones. So this is a decision, an individual decision that you're going to have to make with your partner, and you're going to have to say to yourself, I am going to either resist or I'm going to surrender. That's plain and simple as it is. um the Japanese and the other persons in the world who we call racist, even the Chinese are accused of being racist, but it's self-love, and it's hard for us to wrap our mind around it. Doesn't mean that because you love yourself you should be abusing other folks. But when I see people who have been oppressed themselves or have had to go through certain kinds of tribulation in life, and they have resisted, and then they have joined a group where they're cohesive, at least appear to be cohesive, but at least they understand one thing, that we're coming together we are strong. I can't speak ill against that. I can't covet that, because that's what we need as African people. We need to come together and love each other. We are very hateful towards each other. We're willing to resist each other and stay away from each other. But we don't do that to other people. And so while we complain and regret, we know the truth. We see what has happened to our forefathers, and we continue to accept it and make excuse for it and cry about it and complain about it. Your situation is unfortunate, it's sad, but it is what it is. Black people know the story. We know the juice. All you got to figure out is what the heck is the thing in the past, why we are treated this way. And not to ask those questions to feel sorry for yourself, but to ask so you can empower yourself to stand up and say, I am worth more, I am important, I'm valuable, and not wait for someone to decide that for you. Okay, so I hope this has answered your question the best I can. I'm sorry that you had to go through those things, and I completely understand it myself. But in the meantime, in between time, you have to love yourself and you have to do what's right for you. Okay, so stay blessed.